This is the sequel to my book that some of you might have read it, Apartment Syndication Made Easy. I do this segment as the podcast sequel to the book so that I can teach the different things that I've been doing and also bring some great personalities every week in your laps. Hi there, guys. This is Vinny Chopra. As you know, every week I come live, not live, but through the podcast, but on the YouTube. You could see me, my excitement and everything. This is the sequel to my book that some of you might have read it, Apartment Syndication Made Easy. I do this segment as the podcast sequel to the book so that I can teach the different things that I've been doing and also bring some great personalities every week in your lap so that you could really get some great nuggets to take your business to the next level in multifamily, in senior assisted living now, in hospitality, but all these commercial. And there is a great one, which I was very fascinated about mobile home parks and the communities. There is a whole different ball game, and it's very exciting. That's what I want you to meet, my friend and a great person, Dylan Marma. Hi, Dylan. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, Vinny. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Hey, a lot of you probably already know Dylan. Dylan has been out there in the media quite a bit. I would like to formally introduce Dylan. Dylan Marma is a principal of the Equity Group, a real estate investment company focused on the acquisition and operation of the mobile home parks, multifamily real estate. Like that, he has been a sponsor on over $50 million, 50 millions, guys, in real estate transactions over the last 4 years. He has been featured on dozens of podcasts. I know he'll be featured on a lot more with all his enthusiasm and his drive and his successes. And a lot of people would like to get him on the podcast, like me. Has spent over 100 hours. I bet it's more than 200 or 300. Dylan, you've given yourself so much to the other investors, buddy. I mean, you're a great resource, hours of consulting commercial real estate, to the investors. And Dylan also received his CCIM designation in 2020 and is an active member of the Florida West Coast chapter. And Dylan just moved there in Tampa, Florida. That's Dylan, right. I'm very proud of you, buddy, what you have accomplished at such young age. Tell me more about, who is Dylan Marma?
Well, it's been quite a journey since you and I first connected. I believe we first connected, must be 4 to 5 years ago now. It's a couple of years back, connected off of a Zoom call before having done any multifamily or any kind of commercial real estate. And you were an early mentor to me, and we've been able to keep in contact and work together along the way. So it's been a great ride, and excited to be here.
Oh, exciting. You grew up in New York, is that right? Can I tell the audience a little bit? So
I grew up in upstate New York, about an hour and a half from New York City. And most of what I witnessed growing up with family and people around me was mostly commuting into New York City and working sort of your traditional 9-to-5, traditional jobs in the world of finance. And around the age of about 19, I made the decision that I really wanted to give the whole entrepreneurship thing a shot, right? I really got the bug inside of me and said, well, I'd like to give this thing a shot while I'm young at creating sort of a lifestyle by design and being my own boss and going that route. And naturally, it took a little bit of exploration, but all things eventually led me back to real estate investing. And I moved out closer to 20 years old out to San Diego to go work for a real estate investment and education company. So I actually left school up in SUNY Albany and moved out to San Diego to begin working around these guys that were doing all sorts of different real estate investments, from single family to commercial and so on. And I learned a lot being in that environment. It was a great sort of incubator for me, being around other people that were investing in different types of real estate. And I would actively save any income I could produce and start to buy some single family rentals, not there in San Diego, of course, but off in areas in the country that would actually cash flow. And eventually I realized that I wanted to get into a vehicle that was going to allow me to scale to be something greater than what I saw for myself at that time. What I saw for myself at the time was buying 1 or 2 houses a year for the next 10, 20 years and kind of taking the slow and steady path to achieve financial freedom, which there's a lot to be said about that, but it just wasn't quite my personality type. And I was at a point in my life where I could take, I'll say, a little bit more of a risk to really go for it, right? And really go for something bigger and think bigger about buying multifamily and commercial real estate and so on. And met Vinny around that time as I started to study multifamily, and you definitely helped me think bigger as well, as far as going for larger units and working on syndication sooner than later. And at some point after purchasing the first deal, which was 21 units with a few partners, I eventually moved out to Atlanta to be in the Southeast. And ever since then, I've been here in the Southeast. I linked up with a few partners. We bought our first syndication of 132 units. And then shortly after, we did a deal as 146 together, and then it was a 243, and then 143, and it snowballs, right? So it continues to go until we get to where we are today. And then as of a few months back, right before COVID broke out, just decided, as happens often with partnerships, we just decided we're at different points in our lives and our careers, and decided we'd go in different directions. So at this point, I sort of rebranding under a new umbrella, rebuilding and growing under the Equity Group. And I've launched recently both an investment group as well as a property management group, right? Previously, we had in-house property management, but my partner was mostly running the day-to-day operations. So I've taken what I've learned there and taking what I've learned from people around me to launch the property management side of the business, which I'm very excited about. And now we're rocking and rolling, and we're doing multifamily, but we're also doing a lot of mobile home parks. And that's something that's a bit newer to me. So working with an experienced partner, buying mobile home parks, which I think there's a ton of opportunity there, and we can always talk about why, but that's something I'm also very excited about at this point.
That's so nice, Dylan. That's amazing, man. And I like that, being vertically integrated like my team have been. This way you really get into the, operations side, and you can look at how we can save a dollar. I always say dollar saved is dollar earned, right? And then you are able to give the best to the residents because they are gold. Your investors are gold, of course, in syndications. And then your team members are gold who are representing you right in the front. And the vendors are gold, because vendors, if we didn't have vendors, we wouldn't be able to do the kind of things we really want to do. So tell me more about now. I know we just closed on and I invested with you. I love it, in the mobile home park. And why are you so excited about it? Why should we get into it?
So mobile home parks serve a huge problem that we have in the country, which is the affordability crisis, right? Where there's a lack of affordable housing, and there's also, as we know, the lack of the ability to develop it in a cost-effective way. As development costs continue to rise, we look to a lot of government grants for affordability. But the mobile home park asset class, it's going to serve the affordability crisis, and it's going to serve those that oftentimes are looking for something a little bit different than an apartment complex, right? It's not really a complete alternative. I find that mobile homes as a whole and the parks that we call them communities that we're investing into are ultimately attracting families a lot of the times, right? They want more space. They have kids, right? They want additional bedrooms, right? Stuff that you're not going to find in a traditional, C-class apartment complex. That would be maybe a comparable rent per month. So they move into these mobile home communities, and they have more space, and they have other kids in the community that get to run around with, and they don't have neighbors on top of them making noise all the time, right? So they have this environment that is suitable. And what's really exciting about this for us and for them is that you find long-term residents, right? With typical apartments, you have turnover about 50% per year. Sometimes it can be even more than that, right? So you're constantly turning units, constantly dealing with CapEx headaches and surprises day to day. But with mobile home parks, what happens is that once the tenant owns their home, and they don't always own it at first, in some cases you may have to convert through kind of a rent to own strategy or fix up the home and sell it off. But the end goal for us typically is always to have it to where the resident ends up with the home, lasts at last. And at that point, they're responsible for all the maintenance of the homes. And there's about a 98% plus retention rate. So they don't leave, right? Once they own the home, they're going to stay there long term. And you're simply responsible for the upkeep on the roads, the lighting, right? Any of the kind of amenities that you have throughout the community, but you have very, very low CapEx, which makes your life much, much easier on the maintenance side of things. And that's why when you look at the parks and you really understand the dynamics of the fact that, number one, they can't build more. They are building more in some select areas in the country, but typically it's a almost 0% or even declining supply, because oftentimes people buy them and build on top of them for highest and best use something else. And zoning a lot of times won't let you build new parks because of NIMBY, not in my backyard regulations, or just simply many areas of the country, the economics wouldn't make sense. You need lot rents of at least $400 per month. And a lot of areas just don't have that kind of demand to build a park that might cost you 25, 30,000 to develop in, right? So there's a lot of restrictions around building. You have long-term residents. You're solving a big problem that the country has, right? So I think it's the combination of all of these that has me very excited about the space. And I know anyone that's been following it has seen that there's been some headlines more recently. Blackstone's getting bigger into the space. There's a lot of really smart money moving into the space and waking up to it. So we're definitely not early or first to the game, but we believe that we're probably in maybe the fourth inning, and there's still a ways to go, where there's going to be continuously increasing demand from an investor perspective on the parks. And I'm sure you're going to see a lot of creative ways that we're creating other revenue streams and so on.
Surely, surely. Would you say also then, Dylan, with the COVID happening, this year with the, some jobs being lost and things like that, how do you see the prospect of the mobile home parks in 2021, let's say?
That's a great question. Of course, the COVID impacts depend on regions and kind of park by park or community by community, just like they would with apartments. But from a macro perspective, if you have a park that has a lot of tenant-owned homes, you're in a very, very secure spot because of the fact that you have such low turnover, and the lot rent oftentimes might be $300 a month, right? It's a small enough amount to where anyone that is maintaining some form of job, or even if they have some form of unemployment, they should still be able to cover their lot rent. So putting you at a position where you're not quite facing a bunch of evictions like you might be in other areas. So we're seeing a whole lot less of sort of the CDC impact and a lot of the COVID impact taking place. Of course, we do have a fair amount of our current portfolio has park-owned homes as well. And I'd say those function pretty similar to apartments, but a lot of it, again, falls back on sort of the culture and the community that you're working with, and just the way that they respect the park and the management in place.
That's very good. What you just said, the turnover is less. I think that's one of the biggest expense, is the turnover, make ready cost. And, of course, people leaving, and then, you have to put more CapEx dollars, we call it, right? In multi-family. Very similar, well, kind of on the other perspective, like in assisted living, the one I'm getting more and more into it, with the assisted living, the turnover is low, which is good. Because, when you are in the 85 years of range, you don't want to move around, and you are not really relying on a job. That's the other in the retirement, right? You have already made your money and you're living now the, golden years of your life.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a very common thing you'll find too with the mobile home communities, is that there's a lot of seniors that will live in the communities, right? And I've seen that even firsthand with family members of mine that were moved into a community at an older age because they wanted to get settled down. They wanted to downgrade. They didn't need all the space. They didn't need all the stairs to run up and down. And it just makes for quiet, peaceful living for seniors.
Truly. Congratulations on closing on a very big deal. Can you tell us what attracted and what kind of business plan you guys have for that community?
Yeah, so our most recent purchase was over in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is sort of a coastal city in North Carolina between Raleigh and Wilmington. and it has a heavy marine population, but it has the base there. Camp Lejeune is one of the strongest. It's really the strongest base for the Marines on the East Coast, right? So we feel very good about the military presence that are in that area and all of the jobs that have been attracted. I think it has a $3 billion contract that just got signed for contract workers and other folks in the area that will be continuing to help with the expansion of the base. So we like, of course, jobs always come first when we're looking at a market, right? And we feel very good about the stability of the market. It's actually had less fluctuation than most of the state of North Carolina with as far as COVID goes and unemployment spikes. So we felt very good about the little pocket that we're in, and really we think a lot of those smaller, more affordable coastal cities will continue to thrive along the coast of the Carolinas. Then the park itself was actually, it was extremely well maintained. It's 163 lots. We may have room for some expansion. It's on 55 acres, and there's a number of areas right now that we're getting a survey on to see if we can expand and do some partial development to add additional lots in to maybe turn it into 170 or 180. So we'll see on that side. That we didn't underwrite for that, but that would be a nice bonus for us, something we always look into. But you have, if you look at just the numbers of the sheer amount of land we have, it's 1/3 of an acre per home, right? So these people have a lot of space. It's a very nicely laid out community. The average home age is around 2005. So you have a lot of newer homes, some of the homes as new as 2018, 2020 Clayton models, which will run you $50,000 or more for the home itself. So you have a really well-maintained homes. The previous ownership group, I speak very, very highly of them. They just did a phenomenal job with maintaining the septics, because it does have private septic. So we've seen all of the reports that everything they've done in the last 10 years. They've done a great job of maintaining them. They've done quarterly inspections on the homes for the last few years, making sure that the interiors are up to speed. So we feel very good about being passed off a well-maintained asset that already had a good community and good sort of culture around the community in place. And it's our goal to be able to take it further than that, right? As far as the economic impact that we plan making, of course, we will be bringing the rents up to market in the last 15 years. There's some folks that are legacy tenants that have just never had rent increases for 15 years, right? Sort of something you see pretty common with mom and pop ownership. So that's not something we can do overnight, especially if they own their own home, but over a long-term plan, we'll be working with them, making a plan to slowly be able to bring them up to the market rent and create a lot of value through that. We also have a lot of park-owned homes. Out of 163 pads, there are 140 that are currently park-owned. But again, there's a lot of value that we can unlock in these park-owned homes through either using a rent-to-own strategy or through a home sale strategy to be able to pay down some of our debt or be able to bring some additional proceeds in the door that we can distribute out to investors along the way. So that can create an additional sort of income and revenue stream. And as we continue to sell off these homes, then we're building up a lot of value in the back end, because what happens is that our debt going into the property is at roughly 5%. But if we're able to effectively sell off enough of the homes, what will happen is the park will then become eligible for Fannie Freddie. And if you're able to become eligible for Fannie Freddie, your cap rate on your exit is going to drop dramatically, right? Because someone's going to be able to come in, they're going to buy a deal that has non-recourse debt. It has a lot less potential CapEx headaches, right? It's very, very easy to maintain, very easy to manage. And at that point, it can be like a turnkey investment, right? And a lot of people have compared a truly all tenant owned park to something that has the stability of like a bond in some ways, right? So if we can get far enough with being able to sell off the homes, then we unlock the ability to have Fannie and Freddie come in. It usually you have to have 35% or less of the homes be owned by the resident or be owned by the park to be considered for agency loans. But that's something that we would like to be able to position ourselves to do in the next 7 years or so. So that's been very exciting. And then as far as impact goes, right, before we, obviously us as investors, we have to think about, how we're going to produce returns for our investors. But we always like to give before we ask for rental increases. So we went in and we made sort of an immediate impact 90-day takeover checklist of things that we want to do. So within the first week, we got out there, we're We power washed every single home. They had these hinges on the outside of the homes. We're taking off these hinges because they're a little bit of an eyesore. We got new dumpsters in the park. We put bars in the dumpsters because they had trash kind of flying around. We had we have new signage we ordered that's coming in soon. We'll get some flags around the park. I know Vinny's big on the flags. Then we got surveys to see if we can build some additional homes. They had old rusty playgrounds that were more of a liability and an eyesore than anything else. We removed those already. We're going to be installing a new playground. We're going to be installing a dog park. A lot of people there have dogs and they're very excited to have somewhere that their dogs can run around without a leash. So there's just a lot of upgrades that we're going to be performing throughout the park. And we really believe we should be able to get some really, really positive feedback from the residents. And, as they come into the office, we're sitting there talking to them and running ideas by them just to see if we get some validation from some people there. And so far, everything's been very, very well received. So we're excited about that.
This is very exciting, very, very exciting. Wonderful. Wow. I'm so impressed the way you all had analyzed, and then also, of course, the financing and then the business plan. I think those three things are so important in any kind of deal, and then the exit strategy and everything. I know when I looked at it, I said, oh yeah, I want to invest in that. So any more things? How are you looking into in 2021? Will there be some softening of the market, or what do you think? Some more, parks?
Yeah. So from my perspective, I'm still a big believer in the sort of the workforce housing, and I think there will always be people in need of affordable housing in most areas throughout the country, right? Of course, you don't want to be investing in dying areas or areas that have declining population, but if you're in areas that are big enough MSAs, I like to see at least 100,000 on the MSA, and hopefully at least stable. I found that with mobile home communities, you're searching, it's not the high growth, the high jobs isn't as important as say for B-class apartments where you're gonna receive a lot of rent increases, but you want to see stability first and foremost. You want to at least see very, very stable job base, and if it's growing, that's a big plus, of course. So I think first you want to be in a big enough market and something that's not declining. And I really believe that as people are up against, if there is a challenge in the economy, which we'll find out in these next couple of months, right, as we're in election week as we speak, right? So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see, but I really feel good about being sort of insulated in this space. And I think that the key right now is just not taking on anything where you're speculating too much as to where market rents are going and where prices are going, because there's a lot of uncertainty, but what we can feel good about is where the yield is today, or where the market rents are today, to be able to go in and buy some assets that are producing good quality cash flow. And as long as you have long-term debt in place, or you have the ability to get into long-term debt, I feel comfortable that you're going to be able to weather the storm if you have high cash flow, the right debt in place, and you can always exit when the market is looking good for you.
So true, Dylan. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, we just closed on 308 units in Austin, right? Myself and Saban and his team, and we were able to get 2.68%.
Wow.
2.68. That's the cheapest money I've ever seen. I mean,
That's
I bought
crazy.
2.5. I mean, this is 1/3 of that money. In the 2010s and 11s and 12s, it was pretty expensive money. Right now, it's so cheap. And the good part is then you get interest only, you get the lockout period, and Fannie Freddie, fighting over if you have a good asset. And we will 65% LTV. That's the other thing I want to mention to everybody listening. Be sure to really go lower if you can. LTV, that'll edge, with the downturn and things like that. But you're right. You got to be out there in the game. That's the one thing.
Yep.
I mean, with this receivership, with what's going to happen after COVID, we are hearing now maybe whole 2021 will be pretty. Also, we don't know. Well, it's the election week. Actually, tomorrow is the election day.
Yep. Yeah, I'm big into prepare, not predict. Right. The more we can just buy deals that we can feel comfortable, no matter what happens, we're going to be able to make it out in an okay spot that we can live with. I think that's the most important thing, right? If we can just prepare ourselves, because I remember a few years ago, locking in some interest rates right when we thought that interest rates were going to spike, when we were in the low fours.
Yeah.
You know, and we thought we were getting these steals for interest rates that you weren't going to see again for a long time. And, you know, lo and behold, they go down, right? They go down further, and now we're refinancing. So I'm thinking myself that we put step down prepayment penalties in place, and we didn't do yield maintenance or something like that, right? So I think the more you can kind of structure your deals to give you optionality and flexibility, to make sure you have a way to refinance, or make sure you have a way to sell if the right offer comes up, or if the market shifts, and also liquidity, right? Raise extra funds and have a contingency built into your capital expenditures, right? So that you can weather the storm. And as long as you're doing those things, I think you can be you can be pretty comfortable, right? And the challenge, I think, for newer investors is that those things, they don't look as good on a spreadsheet, but once you're actually out and you're in the deal, you're going to thank yourself, because you'll be able to sleep a little bit better at night if you're paying that little bit of extra interest rate or have some extra cash on the sidelines.
So true, so true. Hey, Dylan, congratulations. You got the CCIM, buddy. Yeah, tell me why you wanted that certification, and what has that done to your thinking?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, so this is something I actually started, the CCIM. I started the classes. For anyone that doesn't know, there's about six, I think 6 classes total that you have to take. There's 4 main ones, and then 2 sort of elective type classes that you have to take before you take the final exam for the CCIM. And it's basically a commercial real estate certification, and they give you an education on sort of the way to evaluate deals, the way to evaluate markets, how to negotiate. And you learn not just about multifamily, but you'll learn about retail and office and industrial, and sort of the drivers behind each of those, and what you want to see in the markets and so on. So I started taking this before having any multifamily experience, actually, because I was recommended that it was a worthwhile course. So I started taking this probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And at that time, it was a whole new world to me. So I learned, for me, it was a good education on a lot of these, a lot of sort of the terms that we use all the time. Like when you hear about IRR, you hear about, your exit cap rates, and you hear about, you're looking at how do taxes play an impact, the before tax and after tax returns, and how does depreciation recapture work, things along those lines, right? I felt it really gets into the weeds on a lot of those topics in ways that oftentimes you don't get into on just podcasts where we have 30 minutes, 60 minutes to dive into. So I think it's a really good class for people to really get an understanding on how taxes play an impact, how to new ways to think about evaluating deals and markets and things like that. I definitely would highly recommend it. There's a lot of good connections too when you take the classes. Of course, I think most of the people in the room are brokers, but that's who we want to be connected with, right? We want to get out there and be working with other brokers. I think it helps for credibility in a sense too, as far as just making sure you really know your stuff, and you've invested into yourself. Yeah, it was an overall really, really good experience. I think you also have to have like 25 or 35 million in transactions that you have to show proof of in a resume to get the final designation. So I think that's cool too, is that you can't just be in the books. They really want to encourage you to get out there in the field to do some work before you can earn the CCIM. So you have to submit a whole portfolio. So it was a really great experience, because I remember at first when I looked at the portfolio requirements, I was scratching my head thinking, how am I ever going to do that, right? It's gonna be a long time. But so it's cool to be able to look back and have completed that, and I'm excited to continue to network with people in the organization. I think there's a lot of great people there, so excited to learn from everybody. One thing I will mention, actually, a simple lesson that I learned that I think is one of the most impactful lessons that really, really stuck with me, was from one of the classes they have everyone take, which is one of the shorter classes, which is Intro to Negotiations, right? And they have a class on how to negotiate. And it talks about assumption-based negotiation. So when you're going into negotiation, a lot of the times people like to just kind of throw a price out there and have the broker come back. And what I used to say back in sales is that puts you on opposite sides of the table, right? You want to be on the same side of the table, You want to be like, looking at the problem together, facing the target and saying, how can we get there together, right? But not on the opposite sides where you're butting heads and arguing, well, it's worth this much. No, it's worth this much, right? And the reason that one buyer can pay more than you can, or the broker views the deal differently than you do, is simply because you have different assumptions on the deal, right? If the broker is using a 6 exit cap and you're using a 7 exit cap, then of course the broker is going to think you can pay a lot more for the deal going in. If the broker is using a 4% rent increase and you're saying, well, we're in the middle of all of this craziness with COVID, I'm going to assume, 1 or 2% year one and 3% after that, then you can have everything else be exactly the same, but your price is going to be a lower price than the broker's is, right? So if you can use those tactfully, I don't suggest going and sending them your underwriting, your whole list of assumptions, but if you can tactfully look at the way that they're viewing the deal and be able to determine where your assumptions differ from their assumptions. Maybe they're running a high pay or a lower payroll, and that in your experience it's going to take an extra person on staff to run this property, right? Look at all those assumptions and then determine and then use that to say, hey, this is why we're not able to get to your price, right? This is just based on our experience. We need to have an extra guy on payroll, or based on where we stand, we're a little bit conservative on our rental increases right now, or exit cap, right? And if you can use that well, I think you're able to really provide effective feedback to brokers. And I think that's just, I think it'll help you build rapport instead of butting heads.
I love that. Love that. Totally. What you said is so right about it, because it's the same property, right? We are looking at what you just said. I know in the performer, we do look at performer, but when we go to the next page, it shows all the assumptions. So it's really good to read all the assumptions of the OM, operating memorandum, like we all see. But the thing is, we want to pay as much as to the actual numbers. That's what we talk about, I'm sure the story comes with the project. I mean, you have to see if it's going to really make big value plays. And of course, the mission-driven units, like we call it, you could increase the rents and so on. That's what happened in Austin deal. I mean, it was mission-driven, and Fannie and Freddie were fighting over it. There were 15 other investor syndicators wanted it. And it just so happened the broker relationship that I had built 9 years back. Hold on. He remembered me from 9 years. He says, Vinny, you're easy to work with. And I know you bought, near Austin, in Seguin and other places, and San Antonio and all that. So you're right. What you're saying is so true. We need to not butt head, but analyze and then be on the same side of the table to share with them, hey, you took this assumption and, we are looking at this one. Let's come up with the middle. And that way you could tell the seller. And I've always felt like, let's deal with the listing broker rather than a buyer broker. Because if the listing broker has the seller on this side, listing broker is there, and you come over here, there is no vacuum. And the listing broker becomes dual owner, fiduciary responsibility, because he has dual agency, it's called. He's got the seller broker and your buyer broker also. And he makes double the commission.
Yeah, plus he's not splitting the commission, right? That's
exactly. He doesn't have to split.
Right. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. They don't want to split the commission. Right? But yeah, no, I definitely would echo all of that, right? I think sometimes some investors might have this sort of a bad view on brokers, like, oh, they're trying to trick us, or they're the bad guys. You have to respect the brokers and show them respect. I think, Vinny, you've done a very good job of setting the example with this in terms of the way you treated your broker connections and keep in touch with them. And you have to realize, of course, their job is to maximize the sale price, but at the same time, most brokers are very, very practical about the way that they do things. They may use different assumptions that you're not okay with, but they know the market pretty well. They deal with 20 other, they deal with hundreds of other buyers sometimes, right? And so they know how other people are going to view the deal. So maybe you don't agree, but maybe there's someone else out there that will agree with them. And you just have to wait till you find a deal that you agree and makes sense to you, and just focus on the relationship first, and don't lose sight of that. So true,
Dylan. Hey, such a great to have you on the show. What else can you share with somebody who's just getting into the game, or any powerful hints on raising money or things like that you want to kind of share?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say as far as getting into the game, there's a lot of confusion and rightfully so, because there's a million ways to start, right? And you kind of sitting there, do I raise money? Do I talk to investors? Do I find the deal? And it can be a little bit overwhelming. I personally have developed sort of the thought process that getting in, I would really focus on linking up with other people that are further down the road than you are, and just finding a way to be able to add value and just get around them. If you're able to go work for them, I think that's a great option. Even if you went to work for someone for a few years and learned the ins and outs, that would be really great. I actually lean more towards going to work for someone that's more entrepreneurial than a big company, because you don't want to be stuck just learning how to underwrite deals. I think there's a lot of benefit to being able to underwrite deals, but if you look at the way that Vinny runs his days, or I run my days now, we're wearing a million hats, and we have a very broad perspective on how to deal with attorneys and CPAs and lenders and brokers, right? And you want to get as much in as possible, right? You want to learn a little bit about a lot of different things in the beginning, because there are many, many important things. And if you plan to sponsor deals yourself, I would make sure you're doing as much as you can to get a broad understanding on how everything works. And then secondly, just find a way to get into a deal. And I say that cautiously, because you don't want to just jump into the first deal that catches your eye, but maybe it's investing as a limited partner, maybe it's investing in a joint venture. But I think your whole perspective on things changes a whole lot when you start to shift from just being in the book knowledge and feeling like you have an understanding on how it works, to actually being out there in the field. Because when you're in the field, you're going to start to see what kind of unexpected things come up and how you have to handle them. And it's going to completely just change your perspective. And that's why, moving into the property management side too, I feel like I've even leveled up again, because as you're in the management side, now when you're underwriting your contract services or your repairs and maintenance, you can't help but think about every single dollar that goes into that when you're putting that together for your annual budgets, and basing off true experience, not just a rule of thumb that you read in a book, right? So I'm a big believer in just getting out there and getting into your first deal.
Awesome. I know we are almost 42 minutes into it, but let's talk about, any other apps you're using or books you're reading, and how can people reach you? Yeah.
Yes. So currently I always have some kind of technology I'm getting into and obsessing over for a little bit, but as they honestly grow their platform, and it's very impressive now what you can do. And
okay, looks like we are having some technical difficulty with I know it's recording. Let's see if I can stop it a little bit. Oh, no. Stop recording. No, just pause. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we are back. I know the internet was a little bit giving us a little bit challenge, but no problem. Yeah, as you said that, you were reading a book and all we were discussing, right?
Yep. Yeah. So as far as technology goes, softwares go, there's really two platforms I've been spending a lot of time on lately. Number one is Monday.com. Monday.com is great for project management. I have all now to where every investor that opts in on my website, for instance, will automatically get uploaded into my Monday.com database. And then I can have automatic communications go out from there through my email software. And then I also have all of our pipeline in there of deals that we're currently looking at. We have a database of a bunch of owners that will be contacting through direct calls and text messages and things along those lines. And then we have all of our deals that are under operation, all of our 90-day plans, and all of our rhythms and routines are all being consolidated into Monday. I think they've just done a great job, great platform. So that's been super helpful.
Then I'm just thinking, what would be another comparison to that?
Asana.
Asana, yeah.
Asana is the big one. I started off with Asana, and for a long time, I was that was where my loyalty was. But eventually, Monday, they've done a lot of updates in the last few months, and eventually, I just think they have a better product. So I made the switch.
Oh, Monday. All right, yeah. I like Monday.
Yeah, check it out. And then as far as books recently, there's a book called The Essays of Warren Buffett, which is actually all of his newsletters to his shareholders at the end of every year. Oh. So he basically talks about the way that him and Charlie Munger are viewing their business and their any kind of capital expenditures they have for their business and the long-term prospects of the different holdings they have and kind of their whole mindset. I just think it's really, really powerful stuff because, he put a lot of time and effort into crafting this for their investors. So it just makes us think about how can we level up our own game and have better communications to our investors and communicate, candidly our thought process and what's going on.
I love it. I love it. Is it in audio also? I don't know. I'll check it out.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I have to check for the audio. I got this one paper copy, but definitely give it a look.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yep.
How can people reach you, Dylan? And
yeah,
thank you for your time, bud. Yeah.
Of course. So anyone can reach me you can always email me. It's probably the easiest way to get in touch. I'm most active if you go to Dylan, DYLAN at therequitygroup.com. That's the Requity, REQUITY group.com. You can also check out our site if you want to connect through there. We have the investor portal in there. We have a little bit more on what we do. So feel free to check out the website. And I'm active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and social media. So you can feel free to give me a shout. And we're always happy to help, whether someone's looking as an investor or someone wants to connect. If I can, help coach on any scenario, just let me know.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dylan, so much for coming and talking. And hey, guys, if you like the content that we bring to you every week, please go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, and share this podcast, even the YouTube channel, subscribe to it, and then share it across so that other people can really learn from the knowledge that we are trying to give. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate that. Let's move the needle. Have a great week and ahead, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.